Yeah, and thank you for that, Joe Beth. Well, with the other side of what's actually happening with the race, we want to talk to the Democratic Party and break down the numbers there and the strategy. So we're bringing in Kevin Walling, the Democratic strategist, who's advised the Democratic National Committee as well as congressional campaigns. First, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, Kevin. We want to start about the fact that we are awaiting results, and I'm curious, what has surprised you so far the most coming off election night?
Certainly, how close it's been has certainly surprised me. I think, folks coming into the election thought potentially that it was going to be a big Democratic wave. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that in a lot of those states, and you've had some excellent reporting in terms of what we've seen coming out of Florida and Texas, Iowa, other places. I think one of the other disappointments coming out of this night was the fact that Democrats didn't pick up as many seats as we had hoped for in the United States Senate. That's obviously disappointing. But I think, as the Vice President's campaign, Vice President Biden's campaign has said all along, they believe that this is going to be a close election that was going to come down to a handful of states, and that the mail-in ballots were really going to make the difference in terms of who would actually get to that magic 270.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we're going to focus, of course, on states like Pennsylvania. What are the expectations there?
Sure. The expectations are that the vast majority of the outstanding ballots still needed to be counted are from Democratic-rich areas like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, suburb communities that are trending for the former vice president. So canvassing begins in Philadelphia, for example, starting at 9 a.m. Today. So we'll get a clearer picture, I think, as to how those votes are lining up, hopefully for the vice president in the coming hours.
Sure. And Joe Beth just mentioned this with our Republican strategist. I'm going to bring it up with you. President Trump, he's already proclaimed victory, but we know election results can only be certified by elections officials. How do you expect this to possibly play out in courts?
Sure. This has been the president's desire to bring this to the Supreme Court. He campaigned on that in terms of installing Judge Barrett, now Justice Barrett, on the Supreme Court because he thinks that he's going to win in the federal judiciary. But I think Joe Biden and his team have always thought that this is an eventuality, that the president is going to play dirty and try and hold back many of the votes yet to be counted. And you're seeing the vice president's campaign really lawyer up in a lot of these key jurisdictions. We have some of the best election lawyers on the Democratic side fighting for ballot access, fighting to make sure that every ballot, every American's voice is heard as part of this process. And I think they're ready to take on this fight.
With 7 seats that we still are not sure about when it comes to the Senate, that they're considered kind of outstanding, what are the expectations that you see for those seats?
Yeah, it was great reporting in terms of the ranked choice conversation earlier. I think Democrats are still very hopeful about Susan Collins' seat in Maine once we go through that process. I think all eyes are also on Georgia, not just in terms of the presidential race as we get a clearer picture in terms of Atlanta, the suburbs. So much more of that vote is outstanding. There's two key Senate races on the ballot in Georgia. So I think Democrats are certainly hopeful there. I think we're going to win big in Michigan in terms of that Senate race. That all numbers indicate that it's trending towards the vice president on the top of the ticket and for Gary Peters in Michigan. But either way, it's going to be a very divided U.S. Senate. Maybe it's a seat majority in either direction.
And what about the House, the seats that were picked up there?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, that was one of the surprising things to come out of the results last night and this morning is I think you saw Democrats very hopeful that we would make continued inroads in what we are calling Trump country, seats that are in districts that went for Donald Trump in 2016, that went for the Democrats in 2018. And unfortunately, we lost a number of good Democratic freshman members last night. But again, there's a lot of votes still outstanding in places like Texas, in places like California, and others. And we'll get a fuller picture in terms of the Democratic majority. Democrats will hold the House. The Speaker, Speaker Pelosi, will regain her speakership. But again, it'll be up to some of these results to see how big that majority is.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on NBCLX. We'll be right back.
Great to be with you.